Hello, I'm Dr. Ian McCullough, and welcome to Social Media Analytics. In this first lecture, we're going to be talking about what is social media analytics. We're going to be looking at, in this module, some of the recent trends in social media analytics, and we're going to be setting the tone for the course. So in this course, this is going to be a little different than a lot of the courses you've probably taken in the Whiting School here. There are three components to social media analytics. One is information technology, IT. These are like the platforms, how the system works, this sort of thing. There's mathematics. So there is a lot of graph theory and math that's not common in your normal high school, college engineering education, but it's a branch of mathematics that's very useful for understanding dependent or highly relational data that we find in social media. And social science. How do people behave and how do people interact with the technology? And this course involves all three of these equally. So there will be some modules where, hey, it's going to be old school. I'm going to teach you some math and you're going to work problems by hand. And you're going to scan in and send in those that work to me. Or some people like to try and do it in Excel or something like that. Very much like, here's a math lesson, let's do the homework, let's turn it in. There's other ones that are going to be social science. They're going to involve no math at all. It's going to be covering social science theory, and it'll almost be like harkening back to a sociology or psychology class that you've taken with some of that material. And then the IT, there's going to be some programming requirements. We'll use R, we'll use Python, sometimes to do the mathematics. But the way these work together is when we're researching or understanding, the ways in which people interact with technology, it's understanding the social science or the sociology of it, or the psychology of it, that helps us inform better theories or hypotheses, and then we use the mathematics to collect data or to analyze data in a way that actually draws insights about science. And then, of course, information technology is about how we collect the data and how we kind of manage the system, how we use the information we get from that research to make those systems better, right? And so that's how these three things work together. So a lot of people like it. Some people get frustrated because they just want to program and they just want to do math, and there is some social science in this. Other people like the break and think that it's a little refreshing difference to what they're normally doing. But that's just trying to give you an idea of what you can expect throughout the rest of the course. One of our goals is to equip you with tools and skills and understanding so that by the end of the course, you can actually produce innovative, novel research about social media analytics. And so the final paper in this course, usually about 1 in 10 students get their final paper published in a conference proceeding or academic journal. And if you do that, then Johns Hopkins will actually give you $2,000 towards the costs of attending that conference. So definitely something cool to keep in mind as you're going through the course. I think the most recent one was in Turkey. And so we had two students present at the ASONAM conference, ASONAM conference in Turkey. I attended virtually from the coast of Jamaica, so I wasn't there, but they would have sent me if I wanted to go. So anyway, look forward to that. This is a very exciting class and a very interesting topic. Now, there are no shortage of different social media platforms and apps that are out there, and they're continuing to grow every day. The basic definition of social media is user-generated content, that is shared with others. Now, people use those different platforms for different purposes. Some for networking, and I'll take the point here to just give you some quick definitions. Social media is not synonymous with social network. A social network is a set of people and a set of relationships between them. That relationships might be communication, and might be communication online, but that is a subset of the broader topic of what a social network is. Social networking is where you're attempting to improve your position in the social network with some set of actions. And people will use social media for social networking to improve their position through through posts and shares and influence and things like that online. And we're going to be talking about all of that throughout the course. Some people use it as a lower cost way of publishing. It's making publication a little more democratized, letting everybody kind of contribute. But then that's also adding a lot more content out there to sift through. How do people share efficiently? There's collaboration, there's discussion, there's messaging. There's a lot of different applications out there in the social media landscape. And people use different applications for different types of things. And I used to kind of go through a lot of the leading social media platforms. We're going to highlight what they are, but I've stopped trying to go through all of them because there's just too many. And most people have some experience with a set of different social media platforms themselves. And so, if you're curious about one of the more popular ones, you can always go check it out. But it just seems futile to try and keep on top of all of the different posts that are out there. I have been teaching this course since 2015, and a lot has changed over that time frame. So to that point, here are some of the more recent trends. Almost 10 years since I've been teaching this course that we're seeing more recently. So the first is social commerce. We're actually seeing a lot more monetization of social media and social media platforms. A lot of ad revenue now is being generated through social media. So people are using social media for various markets. Like even in my neighborhood, if I wanted to sell something, instead of waiting for a yard sale and hoping somebody will come by or trying to, sell it to some thrift store, I can go on Facebook and put something out to the Facebook marketplace or my local community and say, hey, I got such and such for sale. Does anybody want it? And so we're seeing this rise in the use of social media in different creative ways for money. There's also the use of influencers, right? Where it used to be in 2015, there were very few ways in which you could get direct money by being an influencer on social media. But now, as more and more ad revenue has shifted towards social media, people that command a large following can actually get paid for their network and the amount of time that they spend online, the amount of people that interact with their profile, and that sort of thing. So there's increasing ways in which people are making money on social media, and I think that's just limited by people's creativity. The second big trend is social justice, and we say social justice and brand involvement, but I guess it was post COVID, post George Floyd. A lot more people have been using social media as a form of social activism or bringing light to various issues involving social justice. And a lot of advertising brands have been also getting involved in that as well. Now, what we're going to see a little bit later is some of the counterintuitive nature of social media. Just because there's an issue that's popular on the mainstream media or now even social media does not mean directly that a lot of people are in agreement with that. And so there can be a lot of discourse, and that can be manipulated to affect public opinion in some very interesting ways. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that. The metaverse is where there's this mixture of online and offline realities, like there are entire economies that exist entirely online, like games where people can actually trade real money for getting assets or things like that in games, and that's now starting to move into social media. Where that's going to trend from here on out, I'm not too sure. Next one is the rising popularity of short videos. So there's a paper we did. It was actually one of the ones presented in Turkey where we were looking at this topic of mental health in social media. So for a number of years, there has been an observation that with the rise in social media, there's also a rise in loneliness and isolation, in depression, in suicide. And there's been some speculation that a lot of this can be due to online bullying or bullying through social media or people just being mean to each other on social media, or it could be because people are choosing to not engage as much in in the real world. And so with the rise of these short videos, we decided to do a refresh. We surveyed a number of young college students between the ages of 18 and 24. And what we found was with these short videos, there's a change. Instead of people being mean to each other with the anonymity of social media, and instead of having this like kind of cyberbullying and negativity, we just see people posting little silly short videos and laughing about them and liking them, and we see a lot less of the vitriol, and we see a lot more positive mental health outcomes as a result of this rising popularity of short videos. How that's going to filter in with marketing and all these other things remains to be seen. There's also an increase in topics dealing with sustainability. So a lot of companies are trying to figure out how do they make their products have this air of sustainability, whether it's true or not. It's certainly popular, and so there's a lot of that. And then same thing with inclusiveness. We talked a little bit about monetization, and there's new and continually changing ways of how you monetize the platform. And so social media platforms, they want to keep an audience. That's where their value comes from. And so how do you get people engaged? How do you then pay your influencers to be using your platform as opposed to one of the many others? How do you get more money for the platform itself? How do you improve ad revenue? All of that is an active area of research and continuing evolution. And then the last one is these like personalized ads and predictive analytics. So I'm sure you've had the experience where you've searched for something on the internet and then you start seeing in your social media feed similar ads coming to you. Well, you'll see a lot of these things are linked across different platforms. And so people are trying to personalize the ads to be more effective, to be less annoying, ideally, and being able to kind of predict what actions people are going to take. What's interesting about this is social media makes up more than a third of the total time people spend online. So it's not just internet, it's not just logging in for your class. About a third of the time the average person spends online is on social media, communicating, generating content, checking up on their friend groups. So some of the research topics, I want you to think throughout the entire course about research, about what's interesting to you and how you might be able to contribute to new knowledge on social media. Some of the topics that people are studying more and more is a little bit about who uses social media, what they use it for. That's not something that you're going to do because you're going to see in the next lecture that that's already probably been done more extensively than you or I are going to be able to pull off. There's a lot of work on user safety and privacy. So again, that ad dealing with mental health and social media that's in your reading is dealing with safety and privacy. There's a lot on public health and health information bias. So this was very popular during the COVID period, where when vaccines were coming out, there was a lot of disinformation surrounding vaccines, both for and against. And I'm not making a political statement there, but there was a lot of disinformation going around. And so there was a lot of research about the magnitude, the impact of that, and what people should do about that. And also how the handling of probably the poor handling of the COVID, vaccine period, how that has affected other health issues. There's a lot dealing with disinformation and propaganda. We're going to talk later in this about actual, publicly available information about adversarial nation states and how they're using disinformation and propaganda to directly target American democracy and how that's played out in our politics and in our society. That's an active area of research. So there's another paper in your reading dealing with research we did on identifying a Russian bot network affecting the 2018 midterm elections in the U.S. and how we actually prevented that from occurring. There's a lot with activism and politics. We talked a little bit about social justice and other social issues. So there's a lot of research on that recently. The terrorism information warfare research has been going on for about as long as social media has existed. There's another interesting area that I think is really fascinating, dealing with like platform bias and recommender systems. So if we recognize that a social media's platform's value is maintaining users on the platform to get ad revenue, then how can people understand that dynamic and manipulate it to affect their goals and their needs? And then the classic one is advertising and marketing. How do we use this to better market goods, right? So these are some. Here's another unusual, kind of slightly different paper, and it's also in your readings. And this was dealing with like the topic of e-recruiting. So the FBI, one of my clients, was using an online recruiting campaign to recruit people for the FBI. Now their goal was to recruit more women, and so they were trying to target women between the ages of 18 to 24 to get them interested in the FBI so that they could improve the gender diversity of their force. And so as we look at the 2 years of engagements with the hashtag FBI jobs on, this is on Twitter, you can see that there's different spikes and different elevations that are going on here. And what we notice is the key spikes occurring right in the table to the lower left occurred when there was news ads surrounding the indictment of Donald Trump by the FBI. Now, I just have to say that there was no wrongdoing ever proven or identified for Donald Trump, so don't read into this politically. And the other thing that was interesting is none of the content on social media was negative in any way towards Donald Trump. So what we observe is something we call popularity transfer. So at this time, during Donald Trump's presidency, he was one of the top 10 personas with top 10 followership on Twitter. And so what we see is whenever another hashtag, or whenever there's content in the nudes where it's co-referencing FBI with a popular figure such as Donald Trump, then what ends up happening is because of the way the platform works, right, it then amplifies any of the co-mentioned content. So by mentioning FBI with Donald Trump in the news media, it increases the visibility of the FBI recruiting campaigns in people's feeds, which then generates more traffic, right? You're also seeing a map of the social network there to the right of who's engaging it. We found that most of the people engaging with content were actually men over the age of 35, too old to join the FBI, and so that wasn't particularly effective. And so some of the recommendations we made for them was to co-mention in deliberate posts FBI with things like the FBI Crime Series or Law and Order Special Victims Unit. In doing that, you're now, the target audience, I think something like 2/3 of the people engaging with the, Law and Order Special Victims Unit hashtag were women between the ages of 18 and 24. So by finding these demographics that you want to target and co-mentioning, doing that kind of co-mentioning campaign can really increase the visibility and engagement of your post. So that was an example of a research paper that you could have done in this course. Here's another one that I briefly mentioned, which was inorganic content or bots attempting to manipulate the 2018 midterm elections. And so what we did is we looked at social media content that was following all the congressmen up for re-election in the 2018 midterms, and we look at the account creation timeline. And so you can see here, there was a bunch of accounts created about when Twitter started. That's that first bump. And then you see a bunch more, and that was kind of tied, like in the lead up. There's a bunch right around the inauguration of Donald Trump, and then you see this huge spike that was in the run up to the elections. And so then we look at, for these accounts, we look at the joint distribution of followers, friends, and posts. There normally is a normal intersection of that, but what we find is these metrics in January of 2017 are occurring in this area of the distribution where there's a lot of followers of accounts that are never really posting anything. Well, then when you look at their structure in the overall network, what you see is they're structured in a way to actually manipulate the platforms to increase or suppress the visibility of content. And so then we can actually look at when those occur. And we found that in this particular instance, the Democrats had 11 times more followers, and the follower friend post patterns were statistically different. And so we were able to notify the FBI. They were able to get an injunction to remove those posts. It resulted in a 7% suspension of global Twitter accounts, which was a huge hit on their stock price for Twitter. But it also removed these foreign bots from interfering with the 2018 election. And a point here of 41% of those had never even posted to Twitter ever. And we also identified that 72% of the accounts that do tweet were determined to be bots. And so one of the key points here is getting seen on social media is a lot more than the message of what you say. A lot of people post things that are never really read or engaged with at all. And so this comes from the issue of supporting, some of NATO countering Russian disinformation in Europe. The question was, there's a lot of hesitance about posting anything because they were afraid of how it would get misrepresented or twisted in the media. And so we did this study where we looked at interviews with Twitter front page engineers, a number of them, and through the interviews, could we extract what they said actually goes into the popularity in a feed and what gets you posted. And these are very similar across other content. And so we found things like, in the center here, media, a video will get more engagement than an image, more than a link, more than a like, more than, for popularity. The tweet's popularity itself will affect it. The number of engagements that a particular person or user has will affect it. In the lower center, the shared connections people have will do it. The recency of the video and the audience behavior of a particular audience will all affect that viewership. And so if we're actually going to do a campaign, we need to think more about these topics actually than the content of the message. Because the actual content of the message will be seen, it will be interpreted based on all of these other factors and then forgotten. And it's how do you actually shape the network to actually be seen? Competencies covered. Just going back to these three areas here for applied math, we are dealing with graph theory, matrix algebra, statistics. I will have primers on the matrix algebra and the graph theory. Hopefully, if you're not comfortable with statistics, you might want to brush up on that a little bit before we get too far into the course. For social science, we're going to be talking about cognition, persuasion, trust. If you've had no social science background before, that's okay. We're covering everything that you need to know here. For computer science, you need to have some proficiency in R and Python. Most people will use Python. It's generally better for pulling data, for NLP, for like a lot of the different topics that we're going to be doing. R, however, is the only one that will allow you to do the statistical analysis of network data. Those packages just haven't been written for Python since the entire time I've been teaching this course. Nobody's ever migrated those to Python. We're going to be talking about APIs. We'll be doing a little bit of machine learning, text and image processing, databases. Now, if you've never taken machine learning before, you'll get enough in this course to be successful in the assignments. If you have taken some of these courses, then you'll be able to do much more on the assignments and the research, which will actually make for a more interesting paper. But I assure you, if you haven't had those, there's other areas where you can make a contribution. We generally look at analysis of social media in two main sections. There is structure-based. So this is understanding the way networks are shaped and who's in a position to share and broadcast information. So we do a lot of graph analytics, social network analysis to understand the structure of the social media networks. And then there's content-based. So this is looking at the actual content that's then flowing over that structure. And we'll use things like natural language processing, machine learning, topic modeling, sentiment analysis. Just to give you an idea of a social network, this is an example of a social network. And so we typically look at a user or persona or site as a node, right? That's a noun, it's a thing. And then edge is a relationship or communication between them. And so that will be the edge. So we have nodes and edges. And then a graph is usually a set of nodes and a set of edges. And then an example of that is to the right. And so what you can kind of see in this larger network here is you can see these little clusters, these little pockets of people that are kind of clustered together. And then like this group that's kind of in the middle. And understanding that gives us some insights. We can learn how to measure that and gives us some insights as to how we can for topic modeling, we're going to do some basic stuff with latent directional allocation, LDA. And so this is how we look at a set of text and we identify how topics or how how words are clustered together in a way that kind of helps give us insight into what a document or what series of posts are talking about. Sentiment is where we're actually going to classify content as either good or bad. It's also called opinion mining, and a lot of times people will, especially for advertising, they'll look at the social media posts surrounding a particular campaign or brand, and they're looking to see, hey, do people think that this is positive or negative? What is the attitudes about that brand? Also in politics, when you're looking at how your candidate is trending, are the negative comments going down, the positive ones going up, or what does that look like? There is GIS integration. We're not going to do a whole lot with this. What we find is about less than 1% of social media posts are geotagged, but that 1% of a large volume of posts can be very interesting from looking at it from a geospatial perspective and see, hey, where are certain regions, then positive or negative, or where are they talking about a particular issue or are different topics trending. This is used a lot with first responders. This is used a lot with defense applications, less so with media and advertising, but I think there's potential applications. All right, so bringing all of this together, we can think of the end-to-end architecture for social media analytics as there's a bunch of different sources of data, not just social media, right? There's also news sources, there's the dark web, there's the Internet of Things. All of these sources are going to feed into data. And so we have data about the user network and their connections. We have data about locations, the text they're using, the images they're posting, right? All this data and can be placed into some type of repository or server, right? So that's getting the data engineering piece. And then for analyzing those, we have a lot of tools, right? There's reputation analysis, predictive analysis, what links you're going to form, how's the network going to evolve. We have location inference, we have social network analysis, language interpretation, right? There's a lot of different tools that you can use. And then there's a lot of different ways in which we can visualize those. And so this is kind of the end-to-end architecture of how we go from this raw data and bring it into products or insights that might be useful or interesting to potential clients or scientists. So I hope you've appreciated this introduction to the course. I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit more with you. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions.